interesting that I wanted to touch on again was science can only talk about what it can observe, measure, and describe. And I really, really loved how you pointed that out because I think it's so vital in what we're doing these days that most of us are trying to handle things that are happening in our lives, that are happening to our bodies, that are happening in our experiences. And we'll go to the doctor or we'll look things up and we're like, why can't we find the answers? And I thought that was a really, really good way to describe that. So would you like to share more about, that concept with us, Elizabeth, and your experience?
Sure. Yeah. So I have trained here at the University of Kansas as a scientific researcher in biology and environmental studies and ecosystems, and so that was, a great education. But I didn't realize how vital that kind of training was to my healing journey, because I had an old injury when I was 14 where I broke the fifth lumbar in my back, and it broke into two pieces, and the front part slipped forward. And it's kind of a long story, but I it became quite unstable, and I needed surgery. And it took 3 times for the doctors to actually create the machinery they needed to stabilize that slip. And then a fourth surgery. It was corrective surgery for an incisional hernia that happened as a result. So I was in just a lot of pain, and each time I had surgery, I was in more pain. And um, after my first surgery, I went to the doctor, and he said, "You have chronic pain. You can't heal from that, and your best quality of life is going to be on opiates and benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines are anti-anxiety medicine." And that was what they had. Right now, I was devastated because my training was, you look to the experts and they know what's happening. So I believed them. But somewhere inside of me, I knew something was wrong with that statement. I didn't, I couldn't get it at the moment, but I had to sit in it. I was just so devastated. I was pretty dysregulated by that, so I couldn't think straight. But after a while, I figured out that, wait a minute, he's forgotten his basic science. Science is about probabilities, not facts. And he made a pronouncement: you will, you can't, not the odds are. That was not in the lexicon. It was you can't, right? So I knew, he made an error there. And then the other part I knew was, oh, well, he's operating in a scientific paradigm, and we know that scientific paradigms shift. I mean, anybody that's sat in science is studied it knows that discoveries happen all the time, and as they do, the our awareness of kind of our world changes with it. Right? We never knew what plate tectonics were until fairly recently, right? And that changed a lot, right? We didn't. Now there are still flat Earth Society people, but we thought the Earth was flat. We realize now that it's a globe. These kinds of things, and there are many of those in the science world. So I was aware of those things. And then the third one was, oh, we live in the all that is, right? We heal in the all that is, but science can only comment on that which it can observe, measure, and describe, which is a framework within the all that is. So it's got a limitation. And this is where I became very humble as a student. I had great professors. KU is a great school, fabulous professors, always pushing our critical thinking skills. And thank goodness. I mean, I just like, I thank goodness for them all the time, because it allowed me to actually like tease all this stuff out when I was in a healing crisis.
Mhm.
And so I knew that my healing, for me, yes, I can reference the scientific framework, but I will also have to reference the whole, all that is, not just the part that science can observe, measure, and describe. Another piece of the of my world, the medical world that I experienced, was this reductionist model that they used, where they were very focused on my back. Oh, it's because of, anybody that look, any doctor that looks at my X-ray, even now they're gonna hear your opiates and your benzos, like, right, because it's a mess in there. And and what we find with chronic pain, which I'll talk about in a minute, is that you can have three different people with the same X-ray, and one person will have pain all the time, and the other person, or the other another person, will have pain only when they're stressed, and then the other person won't have any pain at all. How do you explain that? Just by looking at the X-ray. You can't.
Mhm.
See, so I just laid down 4 or 5 bits about the wonders and the limitations of science within the healing field. And I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm saying we have to understand the lens we're looking through when we're on a healing journey. Where are we looking? What are the limitations of the model that we're looking under, right?
Yes, yes, so true. And I love that because it definitely tells us a lot more about who we're talking to when they're saying that we can't heal. Like that says a lot more about them and their models and their framework than it does about the actual body. And I just thought that was so key and such a wonderful, interesting point to open up with and share with all of our viewers. We thank you guys for being here live, or if you catch this on the replay, if you are here live, be willing to go ahead and share anything you have or want to in the chat. Go ahead and ask any questions you like. We're here to help and to answer and to guide you on your journey. And so, Elizabeth Kipp is our special guest today. And I thank you so much for joining me, Elizabeth. We had a little snafu this morning with the time zone changes and all that good thing, all those good things. So, I appreciate you hopping on a little earlier than you expected. Elizabeth is a stress management and historical trauma specialist. She's a certified addiction recovery coach, ancestral healing practitioner, and an international best-selling author of The Way Through Chronic Pain: Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power. And so you touched on it a little bit, Elizabeth, about your story and your journey and how you hurt yourself. And then we're told that you were basically just going to be, on these opioids for the rest of your life. Would you like to take us a little bit more into the details of that story of once you got the diagnosis and you were told that, hey, this is just how it is. I know there was a bit of a journey and a struggle and a process to get to where you are today, where you're not having to accept what you were told way back then.
Sure. Well, let's begin with the definition of chronic pain, because people don't understand that.
Hmm.
We have a certain idea of what that means. Chronic pain is actually defined as any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, all these kinds of pains send the same signal to the brain: it hurts. The brain can't tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart. So that's significant, because most people just think it's about physical pain. And it really speaks to the integrated model that we're already embracing. Remember, we talked about the reductionist model, just looking at the back, right, at the like the X-ray. The problem with the reductionist model is that it's not taking the whole, looking at us as a whole system. And the the spiritual teachers, the yogic texts, which are like the oldest texts that we have, the Vedic texts, they tell us you can't separate mind, body, and spirit. This is fundamental. Somehow in Western medicine, we got away from that, and so this was the problem with the doctors. The orientation, the model, the doctors that I was working with were working under was this reductionist model. So I walk in as a patient, all they see is a back, right? So this was a mistake. Well, I finally found a doctor who understood the nature of chronic pain. And it was so interesting, Kay, because the first thing he said was, I don't need your x-rays or your records. I want to know who you are. And I was like, who's this guy? And where has he been all my life?
Yes, yes. That's what we want to hear.
I didn't even know how to answer the question because it was so far out of my out of the usual realm of questions I had been asked. So that was a good start, and he really, okay. Now we're going to get even more amazing. So his name was Peter Prescott. He was an osteopath, and he was a psychiatrist and addiction specialist, and a whole he was board certified in like 8 different disciplines, so within medicine. So that was kind of remarkable right there. I went into his pain management program to help get off all the medicine and to heal from the chronic pain. And you know what? He said to me when I went into that program, he said, I can help you get off your medications and I can help you reset your stress response. But he never said anything about healing my chronic pain. That was not on the table. But as soon as he said, I can help you reset your stress response, I was in. I was like, and he really understood how to get me off the medicine. And I was so done with the medicine. I was like, I know this is not helping me. So he knew without asking me, because I was on benzodiazepines, he knew I was having panic attacks. He never asked me about it, but he knew. And that was the thing that really brought me down, was those panic attacks. You know, here I had the science background. So what do we do? And we do as humans, but as a scientist, I really was trained for this, to look out for it. What's the pattern? And so I would look at the pattern. I tried to look at the pattern of my panic attacks, and Kay, there was no pattern. And that was like, what is this? You know, these are random. What is happening? I mean, it was so unsettling that it made it worse, right? He understood. And my prescribing doctor didn't understand this dynamic. So that is kind of interesting. And the literature at the time, if you went and you looked at the you know, all that paperwork that comes with your medicine, it wasn't in there either. So there weren't any warnings or explanations of this kind of stuff. And so I had no idea. I knew
Mm.
I was having this problem, but Peter knew, right? Dr. Peter knew. So I get in his class. I had about a 12-day detox, and I was so weakened by it. I was just kind of lying in bed for a while that I ended up kind of being in a wheelchair. And from the moment that I went from the bed into the wheelchair, I had just enough strength to stand up and get from the bed to the wheelchair. And I noticed for a split second that I had no more pain in my
Mm.
back, that it was gone. It was so blatant. I'd had pain back there for 40 years, and all of a sudden it wasn't there. It was like, oh my God, right? So that was something unexpected. It turned out that the pain medicine I had hyperalgesia. Part of the pain I was having was because of the pain medicine. So these
Interesting.
medicines will turn around and give you the thing you're taking them for in the first place, just when they're not used correctly, right?
Mm.
So that's a warning. So I get in Peter's class. There's 20 people just like me. We're all healing. And we're all chronic pain sufferers. And the first thing he says is, what are you doing to contribute to your pain? And I heard that, and those were, for me, those were fighting words. I was like, dude, in my head. I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it. I was like, dude, what are you talking about? How could you possibly say that in this room of all places? And what the hell do you know about chronic pain anyway? Clearly, you've never had it. I mean, I just, whoosh, my inner rebel and my inner defender was fully on, right?
Yeah.
But I did a like a double take in the middle of all that, and I said, wait a minute. Did he just imply that I have some role in my own pain experience? Right? What are you doing to contribute to your pain? That has an answer in it. That has an assumption
Yeah.
that there's another possibility that I hadn't considered. And that stopped me in my tracks. And I'm telling you, he had my attention from that minute on. I was like, okay, what else you got? And the next thing he said was, don't judge the moment. And then my inner rebel came up again. And I was like, inside of my head, I'm like, I'm just sitting here minding my own business. I'm not judging anything. Right. But then again, I was like, wait a minute. He's talking about my pain. I've been judging my pain as bad my whole life. And that right there is of one way I was contributing to my own pain experience was my judgment that it was bad.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah. That's amazing. It's profound how just the right question at the right time can be so jarring and at the same time helpful and healing.
That's right. And I
So
had
beautiful.
the I had the honesty, I had the humility because I was so desperate at that point to actually listen. Right? Like I'm here, like what you got, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh my Lord. So
Yeah.
those were, I finally found a doctor who understood the nature of chronic pain, being that he understood that it was a whole body experience, that we had some responsibility for our experience, that we were he was a qigong healer, and he started in kung fu when he was 6 and he was my age, so he had been on his own journey, not just Eastern Western medicine, but this Eastern approach as well. And he really understood the whole body system. So that was a huge blessing in my life. And that program was only there for 3 years, and he passed away in 2016. But he left a book.
Mhm.
Book's called the way. It's called Conquer Chronic Pain: An Innovative Mind-Body Approach, which you can get on Amazon. And it's a kind of a doctory. It's kind of a. It's a little bit in doctor terms rather than in patient terms, but it's a great breakdown of chronic pain, and there are exercises at the back of the book. I've done them, and they're very powerful. And Peter wrote his book, and then I wrote my book, and they're really a great pair because mine talks about the kind of what is chronic pain, how does it show up in a patient, like, so it was from my side rather than the doctory side. So it's a great set to put together, to really under any, and it's not just for patients but for anybody that's working with people with chronic pain or has a family member, doctors, nurses, all that. This is a great little combination, these two books, to lay out the landscape and bring solutions.
Awesome, awesome. We'll definitely have to put that information in the show notes also so people can go check out that book by Peter Prescott, as well as your book, of course. So you go through this 12-day detox, you go through this process with Peter, and then where did we go to from there?
Well, I was there for 52 days. It was the most remarkable thing. I walked in there with 40 years of chronic pain, and I walked out 52 days later with no pain. Remember, he never said that that would happen. He just said he could help me reset my stress response, and he did. So that was profound. But what was interesting was when I got out, I still felt the momentum of the old stress pattern in my system, the thing that had led to the chronic pain in the first place. So, stress, anybody listening to this that lives in the Western world knows what a stress pattern is. And
Mm.
we can get addicted to it. And it's just kind of like I'm always looking for the next moment, right? I'm just
Mm.
what's going to happen next. That energy, we miss the present moment where all the information is. And we've got one foot in the past, remembering what happened, and then we've got maybe half a foot in the present, and then we've got the other half a foot in the future. And so now we've lost 3/4 of the information that's available to us in the present moment because we're not
Mm.
really here,
Yes. Yes.
right? So, very difficult to find harmony in that space because
Mm.
you're always fighting with the forces that aren't even here. Right?
Yes, definitely. They say most of our problems come from that whole aspect of living in the future or living in the past instead of actually living in the present. So being here now and in the present and experiencing what we're actually experiencing, not what we're imagining we might experience or reframing and thinking about what we've already experienced. So that's really a really good point to bring out that we're not getting that information that's right here, right now. And that stress response, I feel for a lot of women that are like that I'm speaking with, we're not even realizing it, unfortunately. You don't even realize you're in a stress response until you get out of it. And then you're like,
Well,
oh,
it's a habit. It's a habit, and we get comfortable in it.
mm,
And a great example for women is this concept. It's not real, but it's concept of multitasking. Well, actually, that's not a thing, by the
mm,
way. We can only do one thing at a time, but multitasking is this thing. And especially when I got into mother mode, I mean, it was bad enough as a student, but as but as a mother, oh my goodness, that just took me to a whole new level. But what it really was doing was taking an old stress pattern and
mm.
was putting gasoline on it,
Yeah,
right? So
just
it's
sparking it.
yeah. So I didn't. I did do transcendental meditation as a kind of a 20-something-year-old, and I had a meditation practice. But because I was on I was in so much I was in chronic pain,
Mhm.
and I was on medication. Those things created quite a veil for how the meditation practice really could show up. Now, it was helpful for me a few times when I got really in some kind of dark night of the soul moments with my pain, that
Mm.
being able to kind of stay present and focus on a mantra and that kind of thing was for not watch my thoughts and not be my thoughts. That was very helpful. But it wasn't until actually I got into Peter's program and got clean of the medicine and cleared the actual physical pain of my body that the power of meditation became like amplified
Mhm.
big time. And and Peter always said the number one modality to heal chronic pain is meditation because it helps calm the brain in a way that sleep cannot.
Mm.
And in
Interesting.
anyone here who's listening, that you'll recognize chronic pain if you have it by this chaos in the brain. I can't remember where I just put my keys. That kind of thing that shows up. You're having that moment kind of regularly, right? And and this pronounced negative mind. You're bad. The world's bad. I'm bad. That kind of very that self-esteem or its mirror issue is, so negative mind gets accentuated in chronic pain. We all have a negative bias anyway, just to keep us safe in the world. New thing comes up, what's our first answer? No, right? That keeps us safe in the world. But in chronic pain, that gets accentuated. Right. So meditation is one of the things that will help calm the chaos. And that negative thinking is the emotional part of the brain that gets the memory part. Obviously, the memory, I can't remember where I put my keys. That's the memory part of the brain that gets affected by chronic pain, the changes that happen in the brain because of chronic pain.
Mm.
And then the emotional part of the brain gets tweaked, and that's where that negativity comes in. So, meditation is the thing that helps calm that, right? Also, like, meditation is part of the eight limbs of yoga. And in the Yoga Sutras, there's 196 Yoga Sutras. First Yoga Sutra is Yoga is Now. Second Yoga Sutra is Yoga calms the fluctuations in the mind.
Okay.
Right? And so meditation is one of the things that the sutras talk about as helping to calm the fluctuations of the mind, which
Mhm.
is this, you know, this emotional roller coaster that we can be on. Right?
Yes. And at what point in your journey did you get interested in yoga?
Oh, I got interested in yoga back in 1990 something, 92 maybe.
Hmm.
I because I'd been had all this surgery, and I was laid up in the 80s for like 6 or 7 years in bed. I was laid up because of all the surgery and everything. And then we came, that was up in Canada, and then I lived in Canada for a while, and then I came back here to Lawrence and Kansas, where I live. And I was I wasn't laid up anymore, but I needed to do some physical therapy in a safe way. And I found a yoga teacher. I had a every once a week I went to a yoga teacher here in Lawrence, and she was a godsend because I was still dealing with chronic pain, but she was able to help me stay limber. And you can imagine being in pain, you're like tense all the time. So yoga is a beautiful, just a gentle yoga practice. Is a great way to retrain the nervous system and begin to help it unwind from that stress habit. This is part of it. This is unwinding from a stress habit is not just about a mental thing. The mental thing isn't going to work unless you've got it at the level in the nervous system that the body, you're working with the body, you're doing somatic work to help the nervous system actually rewire. So we have to begin, and meditation is great, but Peter had us doing physical stuff too, because he knew we had to address the body, and he would get us in the gym and get us moving. Very specific, beautiful qigong form that he taught us, and then he would put us down into meditation. Right? So he had this great holistic approach. We also did what he called adversity therapy. Every Thursday we'd go in, and we as a group, one of us would share something that we had gone through, and everyone else, and he would help us rewrite that in the script of that, and then the group would support. So that was pretty cool. But the fundamental thing with Peter was, move the body in a helpful way, learn to meditate, learn to breathe, right? And you learn to breathe in a conscious way, leveraging the power of the breath. And then be very wary of when you're in the mind and you've dropped out of your heart. Like
Mm.
when you're trapped up on the he I can't remember, you know, one of the things I hear him say in my mind from time to he'll drop in from time to time and say, get out of your head. You know, I hear him say that, right? So these are the kinds of things that he talked about in his book and that I talk about in mine, and that anybody who's healing from chronic pain, I don't care who you are, you know, even Joe Dispenza and all the other people that write about chronic pain, they understand the power of this.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. And that brings us to cultivating harmony and all the chaos that's going on in the world today. You've dropped a lot of wonderful nuggets on things that helped you with chronic pain and your journey, but they seem like a lot of things that can help all of us with the day to day because, like you described, chronic pain in the beginning, it's not just like a broken bone, it can also be a broken spirit. So, would you like to maybe put those into one nice little succinct, I guess, kind of like a list for us, maybe, of things that you think people could in I just lost my words.
That's okay.
Put into their daily lives to
Sure.
help them.
Yeah, so really, um, we're looking at the nervous system with a stress habit.
Mhm.
And I started life that way. I mean, you know, I'm not going to get into my childhood, but there, I mean, I just starting from the get go, stress. And so, look at that from a nervous system point of view. The brain loves repetition. This is how the brain kind of gets programmed on repetition. So if we're bringing in stress, 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 now the nervous system is saying, oh, this is how we do life. We do it stressed out, right? So we have this stress habit. And we have to reckon, and as you said, you know, we've had it for so long we don't even know we have it anymore because we forgot where the muscles are that are doing all the holding of the stress habit, right? So how do we start to unwind that? So our one entry point into the autonomic nervous system is the breath.
Mhm.
That's our one place. And you can't think your way out of chronic pain. It doesn't work like that. You have to nervous system your way out of chronic pain. And it begins, I know it sounds, how could it be that simple? I hear you. But it's pretty remarkable, right? How you if when you can start to harness the power of the breath and just do, I mean, I started this morning with some very specific breaths that I'm using in my own practice to help steady my nervous system. I'm not going to go into them here because they're a little bit complicated, but I won't go into my own personal practice here because at the moment it's a little bit complicated. But it can be as simple as this: sitting up straight, relaxing the shoulders back and down, even on both sitting bones. Raise the heart, bring the chin in just a little bit so the back of the neck is flat. Now you've got full access to the lung. And just inhale through the nose, long, slow, and deep, and then exhale through the nose, long, slow, and deep, and fully exhale before you inhale again. And continue. And I'm not asking to hold. There could be a little pause at the bottom of the top, but I'm not asking any holds here. That I wouldn't, you know, that's not required. Just a long, like the ocean, the waves coming in. They come in, they go out. The breath comes up and down. And you sit in that for 11 minutes every day for 40 days, and you see what happens to your nervous system. It's a game changer.
Mm, indeed.
It's that simple. Now, it's hard. When I first started doing this work, I was kind of antsy because I wasn't used to sitting still, and we have to be kind of careful. Sitting still in the nervous system can actually mimic shutdown, and we're not wanting. We don't want to do. We want to be have ease in the nervous system. So how do we get around that? So I put on headphones and listen to mantra music while I breathe. Now I've got some music that helps to calm the mind and soothe the nervous system in a way that helps me focus a little better. And then the other thing is a little trick. We call it a drishti in yoga. It's where you focus the eye. You can focus the eye right between the brow point or the tip of the nose. You can even focus the eyes on a soft gaze in front of you. If you bring the eyes down to the chin and focus there, I do that when we've got a full moon coming. That's a meditation, just long, deep breathing right here with the eyes here helps steady the emotions. So when you bring the eyes, the drishti, when you bring the eye focus in, you're helping the mind focus on the task at hand. Because our minds are, right? And it's okay, if the mind, has a thought and your attention gets taken in that direction. I'm supposed to be here, and you just come back, right? And so meditation's not a perfect. Meditation is a process, and you just keep coming back. And this is a breath meditation that I'm sharing with you. But it's a very simple, it's almost on the point of boring. But boring is good. You're teaching the nervous system to be calm, and you're rewiring a nervous system that's like this into this calmer state. And you'll notice, for me, it's like after about 3 minutes, I want to get up and go have my day. It's like even this morning, it's like I'm done. No, I'm not, and I have to stay, right? So that's the building staying power helps the nervous system build steadiness. You're building a very resilient, harmonious system when you come up against your own resistance and you say, oh, now you can get up and go and I'm done. And now you're back in your old pattern. Or you can choose to stay, no, I'm going to rewire. So when you meet your own resistance in a meditation, you know it's working because the nervous system's being forced to change. Did that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I know that the breathing, a lot of people kind of whatever, some breathing, some meditation, that's not going to affect my life that much, but try it. I urge you, if you have not,
Yeah.
really, really try it. It's definitely game changing, like you said, Elizabeth. And so, yeah, so the breathing, the meditation, all of those different things are very helpful, especially in times like this when people are just so stressed out and maybe not even realizing how stressed out they are because they're just like trying to just numb everything. So that's also another way that we kind of deal with things is just trying to like push it off and pretend like it's not even happening.
Well, that just makes it worse. I love that you brought that in. That just makes it worse. For me, it's like I feel it, but now what am I going to do with that? So I have to be able to move that energy.
Mhm.
There's another way that you can help to move the energy in a productive way is I grew up as a singer. As a kid, I was a singer as part of what I did, but I didn't learn chanting until I was about 60 years old, and that's a whole. I mean, singing is great. You're anything that we're using our voice, we're helping to tone the vagus nerve. But chanting on a mantra has as a whole. There's many dimensions to that, and it actually will help us root and ground and move the energy. So so that's very helpful, and a gentle yoga practice is helpful. Getting out and walking, any kind of productive exercise is helpful. I just happen to like yoga because there's a lot of other benefits to it.
Mm.
And but really, you got to move that energy. You can't just. I'm not going to look at that. That's not. That's because the nervous system's still going. Oh my God! right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you know, the mind is going, I'm not going to look at that, but the nervous system is still in the oh my god area. You can't think your way out of this. You have to
Hmm.
nervous system your way out of this. That's the thing, right?
Hmm.
So we've got breath. So there's these different ways you can change your state. How you breathe, how you eat, how you move, what you drink, uh, how you sleep, right?
Hmm.
And also community.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
that's, you asked for kind of a list, and I just gave you one,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Definitely.
Right? So we don't want to add caffeine. So here's the other thing that's cool. We don't want to add caffeine into a nervous system that's already got a stress habit.
Hmm.
When we, I just thought this was so cool because nobody told me about this. It just happened.
Hmm.
I don't do well with caffeine, right? And it just it just makes me more hyper, and I've got plenty of hyper to me already, right? So what I didn't realize was that the breath work actually helped me wake up,
Hmm.
but it didn't supercharge my nervous system. It just
Yes.
helped me wake up. So now I don't have to have a caffeine thing happening, right?
Hmm.
So now we're out of that because caffeine is, there's all kinds of issues with caffeine. Suffice it to say, in this conversation, it does not bring harmony to the system.
I'd have to agree 1,000%.
Yeah. So, but the breath
Definitely.
work actually is a great substitute. It's an up level from caffeine. It's energizing, but you don't have the supercharge and the that goes with
Yes.
it, and the extra stress. Yeah,
Yeah, you get the energy without the jitters.
that's
You
right.
get the clarity, you get the focus, you get all of those great things that people say they need their coffee for or whatever,
Yeah, and it's
just by.
sustainable, whereas
Mhm.
the caffeine thing is not sustainable.
Correct, correct. I have to agree. Caffeine and I don't get along too well either. But every now and then I do like to indulge in something sugary and caffeinated, but it's not usually for focus or for purposes of performing because then, like you said, I'm a little too hyper at that point. I can't get anything done. It's definitely something that you have to learn about yourself along the way. I know that some people it has an opposite effect on, like it actually slows them down. It's like a downer instead of an upper, and I'm like, wow, I don't know how your physiology is working, but that's pretty interesting. So just like the people that can eat ice cream before bed and it like calms them instead of
Well,
getting
that
them,
would be putting you into a sugar coma, really.
yeah.
Right. That's, yeah, and then
Sugar
sugar's
coma.
another one that is a, so what you drink, what you eat.
Hmm.
You know, hydrating again. The other thing that was interesting, I was at a Tony Robbins event. I went to one. I'm not I'm not a big Tony Robbins fan, but I did go to his Date with Destiny years ago, and I learned this there
Mm.
because he starts kind of late in the day. He starts maybe at 11 in the morning, goes to 11 at night, and I'm kind of a morning person, and I'm done by like I'm. You don't give me an. I'm done by 9 at the latest, right? Usually I'm in bed
Yes.
by then. But he went to 11, and that was a, for me that was kind of a grueling 5 days to keep up. But you know what they did? They knew that people were going to start getting tired, and they had people in the audience that carried water, and we
Mm.
all had our water bottles, and they just kept filling up our water bottles and reminding us to drink. And so
Ah.
what was happening was we were getting dehydrated, and we didn't know it.
Mm. Mm.
And as long as we stayed hydrated, we stayed awake. And
Mhm.
so now in my life, when I start getting tired during the day, I check my water intake. And the other thing is, if I ever start getting a headache, they're very rare anymore, but if I ever start getting a headache, my first move is water.
Mhm.
Headache
Yeah.
is a sign of dehydration. So for me, that's, you know,
For a lot of people. Mhm.
and caffeine, by the way, is dehydrating.
Mhm.
So, right.
Definitely.
So what you drink is important. Now, the sugar thing is that will play with your emotions,
Mhm.
right? So, and it's, by the way, sugar is also dehydrating. So, you know, we just have to be conscious about what we're eating.
Yes, yes. I think that one of the biggest disservices that we have had happen with humanity is for us to disconnect what we're putting in our body with how our bodies function. Our brains, our muscles, our moods, everything is related to what we're ingesting, what we're taking in physically through our mouth, through our mind, through our environment. All of it matters. And I just wish more people were in tune to that and on that page instead of say, no, no, it doesn't matter. You put whatever you want on your
Oh
body, eat
gosh,
whatever you want, go wherever you want, do whatever you want. It's all the same. It's really, really not.
it's really, really not. The mantra there is good information in, good information. I used to be a programmer. Junk
Mhm.
information in, junk information out. So
Indeed.
programming, body, same thing. It doesn't matter.
Yes, yes, we're definitely programming our body. I was talking with someone the other day about how our body kind of regenerates itself every 7 years. So I'm like, yes, you are whatever you ate 7 years ago, kind of thing. Like, and they're like, it lasts that long? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Like the cells have to come from somewhere. Where do you think they're coming from? They're refreshing, they're regenerating to the best of their ability based on what you gave them. And so if you give them better building blocks, they'll build better. They'll build back better. Um, so, so yeah, just really paying attention to that. I love that you brought in the concept of hydration and the caffeine. And I'm also always telling people, try getting up in the morning and having water first, not coffee
Oh,
first,
yeah,
not tea
I have
first,
water
but
with a little
water
lemon.
first.
I have
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
lemon in it, which is good for the
Hmm.
liver. Some people take a little bit of Himalayan salt and drop that in there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's, I didn't have time to drink all my waters. This is my lemon water. This is what I left.
Yes.
But I do that much. So I've got this
Hmm.
much to go.
Exactly. I
I got to
love the
catch.
lemon water.
Yeah. So, but then that's you'll feel different. Run the
Hmm.
experiment on yourself. We can sit here and tell you what to do, but this is your experience. Run the experiment yourself. See how your body reacts, and then run with it.
Yeah, definitely give it a try, I would say. And I love in the wintertime, I just make it warm water with lemon because that's kind of fun.
That's right.
But but yeah, I'd love to know also from you, Elizabeth, what is something that you used to believe was true that you don't believe anymore?
Oh my goodness. Um, I used to believe science had all the answers until I studied enough to know they didn't. Oh my God. I'll give you an example of that. I was probably 19 and I took one of the hardest courses I ever took in my life in college, which is a course on physiological psychology, is what they called it, but it was all about the nervous system and the brain and the names of all the parts and what they do and like how the system works, and it's intense, and lots of new words and stuff. And anyway, so a whole semester of this, I worked really hard, and it was hard, and and I'm a little dyslexic anyway, so I have a little bit of I have to work hard to like learn stuff, which is fine. It's just I know that. And at the end of the I get out of the final exam, and I was like, did you learn anything from that experience? Like all the things you had to learn to like learn how the system works and all the names and all the parts and all how they fit together and all, like what did you learn? Anything? And I was like, that's a great question. And what I learned is that the brain is limited in what it can perceive. And I'm telling you, we've got a five sensory system, maybe six if you can include intuition.
Mhm.
But that was, as a 19-year-old, that was humbling to me because I realized how much I wasn't seeing.
Mhm.
Right? That I
Yes.
only had like this five sensory system, six if you include intuition. That was all I had to see the universe with, and that was so that was important, right?
Mhm.
As a younger person, I was like, oh, science has all the answers. Well, no, not really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting one to come up with at a young age and be able to realize that, we have very limited
Yeah,
ability to even perceive our own surroundings and experiences.
yeah.
Yeah, wow, I love that. And then realizing that science doesn't have all the answers. We wish it did. We hope that one day maybe it might. I don't know. It's
Well,
even
it has
possible. Let's
it has
get,
some of the answers.
yeah,
It
yeah,
has some of the answers, and the interesting thing is, the answers are all probable, and they're all subject to change because paradigms shift, right? So it's this
exactly.
very, welcome to the mystery,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I love that. I love the mystery. I love the fact that there are so many different possibilities and probabilities because of the differences between people and time and space and all of that is, as you like to talk about. So I really appreciate this conversation with you, Elizabeth. And I wanted to go back to harmony. You had mentioned earlier about finding harmony in this world. And I'd love to know, how do you describe, or how would you frame harmony in life? What does that look like?
Well, the first thing I have to do is look to harmony within me, that inside that inside landscape. What do I need to do to harmonize that? So the question there would be, well, you know, what's out of place? What's not already harmonized, right? So I'm going to give you a good example, or what I think is a good example. So there's stuff happening in the world that's pretty horrific, you know, and and so instead of going, I don't want to look at that, um, the way I deal with that is I remember my orientation. And my orientation is my alignment with source and the present moment. Now, I'm not saying that I don't attend to external events, but I attend to external events and notice how they're affecting my insides. So if my mind is, so I'm noticing something happened, I notice something in the news. I try not to like. I'm aware of the news, but I don't sit in it. So I'm discerning about kind of what kind of stuff comes in my field. What I notice is, oh, this thing happened. Oh my God, I have a reaction. Oh my God. And now I've noticed it's got my attention. It's got my attention, and I've forgotten my alignment with source. I've forgotten that, right? I've let my attention go in that direction, and I'm feeling it on the inside as disharmony, like this big charge, right? So okay, so I'm having a reaction. Well, it's a perfectly normal reaction. I'm a human being having a human experience here, and I'm gonna react. But the question is, okay, I'm reacting. What do I need to do to come back to harmony? Breathe. What is the thing I need to do next? Right? What is the thing because that thing that just happened that I heard about, it has nothing to do with my next step.
Mm,
Right? So, well, it might have something to do indirectly, but it has nothing to do with like, I have to go pay a bill today, or
mm,
the next thing I do is I've got to pay a bill.
mm,
So that, you see what I'm saying? Like I'm very careful about where's my attention, and when my attention is diverted to the external, it actually creates disharmony in me if I have a big charge to it.
mm,
Now I've got to do the inner work around the charge, and I don't necessarily have to know why is not always a helpful question in this. Why I had a reaction, so what? It doesn't matter why. What matters is I had a reaction. What am I going to do about that?
mm.
Right? How am I going to bring harmony back? So I bring in the breath, I do some movement. I make sure I'm hydrated. All the things, right? Did I have sugar this morning? That just blow everything up, right? So that inner working on the inner garden, cultivating harmony within, is where I focus.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate it so much that you came to share your experience with our viewers today. And I know that you have a free offer for them. Did you want to share some details on that? The
Oh,
five
sure.
ways?
Uh-huh. Yeah, 5 ways to relieve stress, fear, and anxiety is a actually a 7-part email. You get 7 emails one day and one each day for 7 days. There's 2 bonus tools, and those are tools, very basic tools that I use. Each one has a tool that I use to in my own life on a regular basis. One of my favorites, one of the bonus tools is rescripting your inner critic. So I
Mm,
had a really powerful inner critic,
mm,
and uh, I was so done with that. I was because it was relentless. That part of me was relentless, and I was like, you know what? I'm taking you to inner mean girl reform school, and I did. And I bring and there's a whole process to that, and I brought that in as a tool to share with people so they can they can harness their inner critic so that it becomes a lever something they can leverage for power rather than something that disempowers them, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. That's definitely what we want to do with that judge is turn it around and make it something useful instead of something that, takes us down. So again, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm sure there's so many more things that we could touch on, like we didn't get too deep into ancestral release and all of those wonderful things that you do in your practice and have had experience with. I'm definitely going to make sure that everyone has access to you and your website, and we'll put all of your social media information and all of that in the link as well for this chat. So I want to thank all the live viewers and all of the replay viewers. We appreciate you. We're happy to have you here with us. Did you have any final words you'd like to share before we sign off today, Miss Elizabeth?
Well, in addition to thank you, I just like to say to remind everybody that the greatest healer in your life lives within you. A doctor can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but a doctor can't tell the body how to heal. Only the body knows that. So
Mm.
remember that orientation on your healing journey.
So very, very true. You are your best healer. So thank you all for joining us today for this episode of the Harmony Principle podcast, and we will see you next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.